Hello, contractors and business leaders. Dominic here, CEO of Grosso University, the industry-leading training and consulting group. When I first entered the home improvement industry back in 2010, I was absolutely blessed to learn the Rick Grosso 10-step sales system. Rick Grosso always described the sales process as a paint-by-numbers system. For example, if you've ever done a paint-by-numbers before, it typically comes with basic instructions on how to match the right color of paint with the correct section on the canvas. As long as you can follow these simple instructions, you can create masterpieces. This is possible even if you aren't a natural-born artist. And this example is exactly the way Rick's sales process worked for me. It made success measurable, duplicatable, and predictable. And this certainly was the case for me, especially early in my sales career. Simply following the Rick Grosso 10-step paint-by-numbers sales system, I was able to close my first 7 leads in a row, having never done this before in my life with absolutely zero sales experience. Rick Grosso always preached that the best salespeople are not born, they are made, and the sales system is learnable. Shining stars in this industry are trained to be the best with the right sales system. He also preached that the system reigns supreme. This statement made by Rick for decades is now being backed with powerful data. Through our partnership with Voice and other AI tech companies, we now have access to over 100 years worth of data representing millions of sales encounters. And one of the biggest pieces of data that absolutely jumps off the page is that the top 1% of sales professionals in this industry are far more compliant to following a system. Average sales professionals in the industry closing at around 20% are typically 30% compliant to a system. However, the top 1% of closers closing at 50% or more are typically 70% or more compliant to a system. So what does this mean? The system does in fact reign supreme. Sales professionals that go into every house with a proven strategy and next level preparation are far more likely to get the outcome they desire. However, sales professionals that shoot from the hip and wing it are less likely to win the sale. This example, of course, is not limited to just sales. This concept applies to every pillar and every position of your business. Companies that have the right systems and processes in place for each department are absolutely growing at record levels, while companies that shoot from the hip and wing it are often ticking time bombs. And this once again why 85% of franchises succeed, however up to 85% of home improvement companies fail. For this reason, I'm absolutely thrilled about today's educational webinar and feel it's very timely. Today's educational webinar is titled, The System Reigns Supreme, Mastering Business Growth. I'm absolutely honored to be joined today by somebody who knows more about the importance of systems than anyone I've had the pleasure of working with, and her name is Adi Klevit. She is the CEO and founder of Business Success Consulting Group, and she works with companies to design, document, optimize, and implement systems and processes so they can grow and thrive. I can tell you right now, if you're looking to thrive in 2025, Adi is someone you should absolutely have on speed dial. And we're going to talk today about how and why the system does reign supreme and how you as an owner and a leader can truly make 2025 the best year on record. So Dee, I just want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to educate our audience and of course share wisdom on how companies can systematize your business. First of all, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Dominic. So happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully 2025 is off to a record pace for you. I know you're doing a lot of great work for our clients, and definitely we anticipate that increasing more and more as time goes on. And I just want to thank you once again for the partnership between Grosso University and BSCG.
You're very welcome, and thank you. So absolutely, it's my honor and pleasure.
Yeah, so just to kick things off, do you mind giving our audience a brief overview of your expertise, of course, creating systems and processes, and some of the different services that you offer at Business Success Consulting Group?
Yes, so what we do is we create, we document, we optimize, and we implement processes and procedures. By implementation, meaning that we make sure those processes and procedures are being followed by all. So we partner up with companies to figure out what is it, where are the gaps, what do they need in terms of processes, what is missing. We document it. If the process doesn't exist, we create it. So it's a done it for you service. We actually do it for you. And the reason that we do that is, when I started this business, by the way, I've been doing it for almost 30 years. By education, I'm an industrial engineer. Process improvement has been part of my career, my entire career life. And when I started this business, I was helping businesses grow, thrive, being a business consultant, a generalist. And I would tell my clients, you need processes, you need processes, you need to document processes. And it would be week after week saying the same thing and nothing happens. Then I asked them, well, what about if we do it for you? And I go, really? I go, yeah. And it actually got done because myself, at the beginning, it was myself, and now I have a team, a great team of professionals. And that's what we do. We go into companies and we systematize them. We put order in, we put order, systems, processes. So at the end, when we're done, you have well-documented processes and procedures that your staff knows and are followed by all. But the result of it is that the business owner regains the freedom that they so want, the freedom to create on other parts of the business, the freedom to work on the business, and it also empowers the staff to create consistent results every single time.
Yeah, and you talk about this all the time, those companies that may be watching this webinar. Do you have the freedom and flexibility because your business is so systematized and optimized that you can go on a vacation for a week and have your phone off? Can you truly unplug from your business and have that peace of mind that things are going to continue moving forward at the same or even better pace, right? So I'm guessing that most companies don't have that feeling, or most owners don't have that confidence their business is going to run smoothly absent of themselves. And it's the difference between a leader being a true visionary or actually trying to drive the ship. I think every leader should get to a point where they're the visionary leaders that set the course and help navigate the ship, but their team is the one driving it. And of course, you have all the right systems and processes and protocols in place so they know how to drive the ship properly. But take your hands off the steering wheel, right? That's ultimately what we want. So you have the freedom to work on your business, not in your business, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we surveyed hundreds of entrepreneurs. And when we asked them, what do you like most about being a business owner? The number one word was freedom, having the freedom. The problem is that it's not always materializes. And the way to do it, and we're going to talk about it in this webinar, is you have to have different components in the business, but one of them is having systems and processes.
One question we always like asking owners is, do you truly own your business or does your business own you?
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that's part of the freedom concept, right? Because when you're owned by your business, you don't feel that freedom that you want as a business owner.
The good news is you can have the freedom and your business and the lifestyle. You can have it all, but it just takes a little bit of preparation to getting those systems in place, and of course, working with the right people like yourself. So we're definitely excited to dive in. Of course, the title of this webinar is The System Reigns Supreme. And I'm just curious, what does that mean to you in the context of business growth? The foundational philosophy of systems and processes.
Yes. So systems create consistency, predictability, and scalability in operations. Without it, you can't have those components. So that's where systems reign supreme, because if you want to achieve consistency in the business, and I like to ask why until you get to the bottom of it, like, why do you want consistency? Well, you want consistency so there is predictability, so the service that you provide to your customers is going to be the same every single time. Every installation is going to be top-notch, high level, right? Dominic, you train and your training is absolutely the best. You train in sales, but you will agree with me that you can be the best salesperson in the world, but if you don't have confidence in the way that the service is going to be delivered, it will be harder and harder to sell because you feel like a fake and you feel like you are selling something that it's not going to be able to be delivered. And when you sell, you have to promise. I mean, you make promises. Those promises have to be true, right? Because otherwise, as a salesperson, how can you look somebody in the eye and say, yes, we have the best installation, the best install crew. We're going to do it on time. You're going to be satisfied. It's going to change your life. Whatever you're installing, right? Whatever you are producing, whatever you are renovating, whatever it is. If you do not have the confidence that that service is going to be delivered like you are promising as a salesperson, we have a problem. So when we say the systems reign supreme, from my standpoint, what does it mean in terms of growth? If you have it, you will be able to produce the same results over and over and replicate them. And then you're going to be confident that it can be done and you'll be able to scale. Another point is any successful company has to have systems in place. They are the backbone of every company to make sure that it actually works efficiently. Because again, you can sell, you can deliver, but you also have to be profitable. And in order to be profitable, if you're efficient, you're profitable. If you don't have a process on how to buy the materials correctly, purchase the materials, or organize your warehouse, or whatever the process is, and then you send somebody to do a job and they have to run to Home Depot 10 times during the job, well, you know what? You're losing money.
That's like every project I try to do myself. Like I'm a do-it-yourselfer. Occasionally I like trying to tackle home improvement projects myself, and I can start just about any project you can imagine it, but finishing it is a whole different animal entirely. But I'm always guilty of that, making like 100 trips to Home Depot. It's like, what in the world? Like, so I can imagine for a whole business to be doing stuff like that, the amount of inefficiency and cost associated with that is astronomical, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. So that's an example. It's a real example that we actually uncovered with one of our, not just one, but several of our clients, but one in particular I have in mind. I go like, okay, we implemented the process of purchasing, and the profit of the job went tremendously higher, was tremendously higher. Also, if you have a systematic approach, then the owner can work on the business and not in the business, as we touched in the beginning of the webinar. Yeah. Because you have systems working, you don't have to be part of everything that is happening in the business, but you can step away, you can monitor it, you can create the next step. That's why also systems reign supreme. And lastly, systems empower employees because they provide a clear guidance and they foster accountability. Yeah. I'll give you an example. We were doing a project of documenting processes and procedures for a company. It was actually a real estate company. And part of it, as I described, we want to make sure that those systems are being followed by all. So we rolled it out to the entire company. And after we did that, one of the employees came to me afterwards and he said, I have such a sense of security, stability that I never had in any other company that I worked for. I know that I'm going to, if I do what I need to be doing, I will have a stable job because I understand what is needed from me. I have a clear understanding, and the expectations are clear, and it's not muddied up. I know that if I do that, I will be successful. And that sense of empowerment is huge, because then the employees want to stay with you, because where else are they going to find something better that gives them that sense of ownership and stability?
No, I can definitely attest to that firsthand. I had the honor of landing some high caliber sales professionals that maybe even were too high of caliber for what we were doing. I mean, these are people that were making $500,000 a year in their previous profession. And they took the leap of faith because, ethically they weren't comfortable with what they were doing in their previous sales job, or they weren't able to sleep at night doing what they were doing. So they wanted a change of pace, but they still wanted to have a similar or same opportunity, right? But one way I was able to land those individuals was when they came in for an interview, I had our sales training manual. It was a 150-page document that outlined everything they need to do from the moment they walk up to the door to the moment they close the sale, how to deliver the master presentation to make the close the natural conclusion. I had their policy and procedures that clearly outline how they make money, outline lead handling etiquette, communication requirements, dress code, the travel requirements, sales meeting etiquette, like everything was clearly outlined. I had our online training platform pulled up on our computer, and I even had like my sample kits and all the sales tools we provide to them in their career to ensure their success. And they see how well documented and how well structured and systematized everything is, and essentially all the tools they have at their disposal to succeed at this job, and how impressive that is, and how the company made the investment in their success. Also, how serious and high level this organization is. It really gets that buy-in and belief early on in that employee. And again, the right person's going to be really grateful to have that structure in place. Clarity is absolutely everything. So I definitely agree with you firsthand. I noticed that shift, and that's not something I always did like day one when I started interviewing people. That's something that I learned over time, that the more organized and structured those interviews were, And the more clarity I provided that candidate on the sales system and the policy and procedures and even like the employee handbook and stuff like that, all of a sudden they're like, this is an organization that's really organized, really professional.
And it's stable. And it's stable, Dominic. It doesn't go anywhere because, you look at people that started their, let's say a contractor, they decided to, well, I'll give you an example. Okay, so a client, moving company, he started because he was sick of just working for somebody else, wanted to have his own company. And it was him and another guy. Then he became successful because he has great people skills. He knows how to sell. He hired more and more people. But now that after he created those processes, we created together the processes, the training, it's there, it's stable, it creates stability. It's like the foundation of the house, right? There is a foundation. So no matter if you have ups and downs, because every business will have ups and downs, the business is not being swept away. It's there because there is a foundation. So you can always bring somebody else, get them through the training, and you create a consistency also in the training, which we're going to talk more later, but that's part of it as well.
Yeah, no, that's all amazing stuff, and I definitely appreciate you diving into the system reigns supreme concept. And in my little introduction, I gave the example of how the top 1% of sales professionals are typically 70% or more compliant to a system and a process. And I don't feel that's limited to sales. So I'm just curious, how do you feel that example applies to every department in the organization? Whereas it seems like the more systematic or the more structured and organized a person or department is or company is, the better the performance.
100%. Think about it. In a company, let's take the home improvement or HVAC or plumbing or whatever a company that you have the sales people selling something, selling a product, they have the contract signed with the client, the customer. Then they bring it to the office and then it's up to the next team. It's like a relay race. So now it's up to the next team to schedule, to deliver, to be in good communication with the client. If you had a perfect process on how to communicate to the client, and the account manager, the customer service, whomever takes it next, follows that procedure every single time, people are not going to back out of the sale because they're not going to be dissatisfied. Yeah, there was always going to be maybe 1% that whatever happened, right? But the majority of them will stick with it because of the care, because of the communication, because of that process. So that's an example of applying the communication process every single time, no fail. I know it for myself in my own company. If we ever take shortcuts or with this client, we're not going to follow our process, something goes wrong. If we follow our onboarding process and we have a very specific onboarding process, there is a series of emails, there is a series of actions that happen, there is communication that happens, there is behind the scenes, the back office, what they need to do, process the invoice, process the contract, set up all the systems so everything is ready. Whenever we take any shortcut, something goes wrong. Whenever we follow the process exactly to the point, it happens. And then let's say my office manager is on vacation. Somebody else can step in and do the exact same process with the exact same results. Yeah. So that is where it applies to every part of the organization. So if it's customer service, operations, sales, systematization drives excellence. And when you align every team with clear processes, it ensures cohesiveness in the organization, and the organization overall has a high level of performance. So for a person, if they are high performing, they're one of the top 1%. Sometimes if others are not performing around them, that can affect their performance. That example, for instance, of the salesperson, you can be one of the 1% of the salespeople, but if you hand the contract to the office and the office drops the ball, guess what? The client asks for refund or doesn't want to move with the project, with the contract, then the salesperson is going to lose the commission. Yeah. But if you have consistency and trust across the organization and everyone is at that top 1%. I know not, you have 100%, you can be in the top 1%, but then but you know what I mean? You have the elevated, you can be 1% of your industry. So everybody that works for you is going to be at that high level. Then you have cohesiveness and you have teamwork, and then everybody wins.
Yeah, that's truly what it means to build an apex level company, is where every department in the organization is systematized and optimized. Because I've had that firsthand experience, Adi, trying to get sales teams fired up to go sell more. And they're like, Dominic, our production team has a really hard time selling or installing what we're already selling. And then I have these one-on-one conversations with salespeople where all the jobs are in shambles and the crews are, disorganized and the jobs are, upside down profitably. It's like, and the salespeople are getting penalized for stuff that's outside their control. So if you want to keep the morale of everyone at a high level, all these departments need to be rowing in the same direction. They all need to be systematized and optimized. That's actually one of the questions I had for you, because obviously I understand the importance firsthand of systematizing your sales process and your sales division. And of course, we talk a lot about that in marketing and things like that. But if you were to look at all the different departments within an organization, whether it be sales or marketing or production or the back end, which department do you tend to see as the most neglected when it comes to creating systems? Do you see like a common trend where, I see a lot of people investing in sales and marketing, but you got the production, like the redheaded stepchild of the industry. They just kind of like, they neglect that quite a bit, or is there a different department that you see often neglected in this business?
I see a lot of operations and production because they're often neglected, because business owners tend to focus on the sales and the frontline sales. But then exactly for the reasons we just discussed, if you don't have your back end, your operations and production under control, then no matter how much you sell up front, you're going to crash, because it's your reputation. Right? I mean, if you want more sales, you have to have stellar results. You have to have great reviews. But if you are selling a lot, but you don't have your operations and your production lines in place, then you're taking money, not delivering. You're going to get bad reviews, bad reputation, and it has a whole ripple effect. Yeah. Also, it will come back to your sales. Your salespeople themselves, the salespeople are going to feel guilty selling your products or your services, and the leads are going to stop coming because of bad reviews or because basically like lack of referrals. Now, many businesses assume that their back end processes are fine until there is a bottleneck or a crisis that occur. Mm-hmm. So my advice would be, don't wait until something happens, because then it can be too late. I have many people call. I'll give you an example. There was it's a small manufacturing company, and I got a call. I was about to board a plane. It was Thanksgiving a few years ago, and my family and I were traveling to see other family in another state. And I get a phone call with one of my very best trusted referral partners. And he said, Adi, you have to do me a favor. You have to take on this client. I go like, what's happening, Steve? And he said, well, his operation manager gave notice, that has been with him for 5 years and has all the knowledge, gave notice, and he's gave 2-week notice, and now it's Thanksgiving, so we are losing, basically it's a long weekend, we are losing 4 days. We need to document everything that he knows, because when he leaves, all this knowledge walks out the door.
Right.
I wasn't able to take on the project because we only take projects that we can deliver, because I don't want to fall into the same thing, but it is a crisis. So you should be prepared before a crisis and know that you should have your systems in place, so you do not get into such a situation. Another example, I had a client that they had quite a complicated accounts receivable system and procedures. They didn't have it documented. The person that was there as accounts receivable manager, very dependent, very loyal, but she had a medical emergency. So she had to be taken to the hospital, an emergency operation, and she was out of commission for 4 to 6 weeks. Yes, she could, after she recovered, she was able to part-time come back to work, but for a few days while she was in the ER, nobody was able to do her job. That's a crisis, a bottleneck. And that area was neglected because it doesn't, well, I don't need my systems for the AR, for accounts receivable, because I have somebody who is loyal. She will never go away. She's very there. An owner that something can happen to them, or an owner that wants to go on vacation and then they can't because nobody can replace them. All of those areas are neglected areas, because if you can't extract yourself from the business, if you have somebody that if they leave, it's going to be a problem, or if something happens to them, it's a problem, that is a neglected area that I see happen a lot when you rely on somebody who is stable, somebody who is there, but what happens if one day they're not there?
Yeah, and that's why I use the term ticking time bomb in my introduction to this webinar, because I see a lot of companies that are just so dependent on the knowledge held in people's minds, and they don't document it, and nobody's invincible. And things happen to everyone, right? What if there's a situation where they have to move out of the state? Or what if there's a situation where they get in an accident or get sick or have a baby, or fill in the blank, hundreds of ways that they could be taken out of their position for short or long-term periods of time? What are you gonna do about it? Like, do you have the systems documented where somebody else can come in and continue to keep things running, on their behalf? And if that's not the case, if you're watching this webinar and you can clearly think of a specific position or department in your organization where if the key player were to be sick or go on vacation or for one reason or the other, leave your business, what's going to happen to that entire department or that position? Are you going to be able to continue moving along as if nothing happened, or is it going to be devastating to the trajectory of your company? So, and this kind of is a good segue into my next question, because, one thing I'm seeing, and I've talked to you about this before, is there's, of course, a huge influx of money being poured into this industry. There's a lot of private equity firms buying up companies, and they're investing billions of dollars in training and technology and systems and processes. And I'd say, for the right PE company, that's one of the big value adds that they bring to the table, is a lot of them do have systems and processes for a lot of things. Not everything, but they bring a lot of organization to a business. But with all this happening and this rapidly changing dynamic industry that we're in and the influx of technology, why do you feel that it's more important than ever, more critical than ever, for businesses looking to thrive in 2025 that they get these systems and processes in place yesterday?
So increased competition, as you mentioned, evolving technologies, they require businesses to be more efficient and more adaptive. And if you are embroiled in chaos, you won't be able to look outside and look at the opportunities, assess the threats, look at the challenges, look at the stops, look at what is there. You won't be able to do that because you're so embroiled within your own organization. So if you want to be a top player and be competitive, you have to bring the house in order. And in order to bring it in order, you have to have systems. And going back to also, it is a tough hiring market.
Yeah.
It is, because it's competitive. But if you have the right systems, you will attract the right people. And I know some people are listening and go, yeah, that sounds like a cliche, but it's not. Because people are going to gravitate towards an environment that is conducive to their own purposes, an environment that can help them grow and thrive, an environment that gives them stability. But not only that, you will be able to hire people that are aligned with your core values, with your culture, with who you are, and train them.
Yes.
You don't have to hire rock stars. You make rock stars, just like you said in the introduction.
Yeah.
You make good salespeople. With all the technology that we have right now, you can make great salespeople. You don't have to rely on someone that has those natural skills. Yes, you do have to have some personality traits that are good. I mean, otherwise, you won't be able to be, if you're shy and you're afraid and you can't talk to people, you're not going to be a good salesperson.
Yeah.
You can argue that you can train that as well. But let's say you are a good communicator, you're a people person, you find the right people, you can train them if you have the right system. So that's, I think, in terms of competitiveness, it's very important to stay on top of it. And if you want to scale quickly without chaos, and that's your plan for 2025, then you have to have systems in place.
Yeah.
This is, if you feel that now you have the opportunity, economy-wise or not, whatever you look, your outlook is for the future, because you can look at it both ways. If you feel like things are going to become better, so there are many more opportunities, you better seize it, but you better be very organized in order to achieve that. Or if you think things are going to get worse, even more, you have to be super organized so you don't miss out on any opportunity, and that you are super efficient and profitable as well.
Yeah.
And, and processes, they help business stay consistent and resilient during hard times and during also times of growth. Because when things are tough or things are tight, you definitely have to have processes so you're resilient, so you're efficient. But also when you're growing fast, it can be pretty chaotic. And that's where companies, there was a study done. I went to a lecture, and it was shared, the statistic that was that I think it was the number 2 or number 3 reason why small businesses fail, small, medium-sized businesses fail, is growing too quick, too fast.
Yeah.
And that can happen because all of a sudden you get all this, you get all these orders, you get all this demand, but you can't service it, you're going to go under.
Yeah, well, look what happened in 2021. You talk about the golden years of the home improvement industry, 2020, 21, where the industry just exploded. 15% growth across the whole industry. $90 million or $90 billion growth in 1 year, something like that, something crazy. And I saw so many companies making money, tons of money, despite themselves. I said one of the most dangerous things that can happen is having reasonable levels of success doing it wrong. Because then when things get back to normal or when things settle down a little bit, you realize that, wow, I have no systems, no processes in place. Nobody is expertly trained in how to overcome this challenging and difficult time. And they're just simply not prepared. And we saw that in 2023 and 24, where a lot of companies and a lot of individuals kind of got hit in between the eyes with reality, because things started to normalize again. It's not that it got bad, it just got back to normal. It just wasn't absolutely insane where people are spending all the stimulus money and the early days of people getting locked into their homes and spending more time at home and working from home and all that stuff. So now that's subsiding. Now people need to be expertly trained on how to have similar levels of success or better levels of success, even though things are a little bit more challenging out there.
That's right. And it's part of the competition, because while your competition is still trying to figure it out, be the one that actually figured it out and forge ahead, as opposed to being in the same position as they are.
Now, one thing you're talking about, is, of course, you don't have to be a natural born salesperson. If you get expert training and coaching, you can actually build your sales staff, right? You can create these all-star sales performers. And I want people to understand that that's applicable to every department, because one thing I hear over and over again, Adi, I'm sure you hear it all the time, is there's a labor shortage. So that's a challenge, right? And it's real. Okay, let's assume that's real. What can you do? I can tell you what top companies are doing. They're actually creating their own factory training, certification, and apprenticeship programs where they're recruiting kids literally out of high school or out of college or tech school, and they're putting them through this installation training and certification program, and they're building their own labor force. They're building and creating these installers. So if you're only going to be looking at the current pool of labor that's existing now, you're going to have limited opportunity. But if you have the mindset that I'm going to have the systems and processes to create my own installers, to train and certify my own labor force, now you're going to be able to thrive in economies and downtimes and stuff like that where other companies are going bankrupt. And
that's exactly right.
And that's your insurance policy, right?
It is your insurance policy. You're absolutely correct. It's empowering because you are self-sufficient and self-reliant. You don't need to wait. You don't care what the economy is doing. You recruit people that fit your culture, that fit who you are, that have accountability, that have ownership, and you train them. Because trying to find the perfect individual that is already trained, has years of experience, and also has the value and personality that you're looking for, doesn't work. I mean, it works, but it's finding the unicorn.
Yeah.
But having those programs and those apprenticeships and the way to train people, that is the way to go. And we helped many companies create their academies, their learning management systems, their processes, including quizzes, including hands-on demonstrations and experience. That is the way to go.
So of course, a lot of pillars of the business, and a lot of people say, of course, if you're out of leads, you're out of business. Marketing is really where everything starts, from phone call to install, everywhere in between. But when you're looking at marketing, what are some of the biggest reasons clients reach out to you to get systematized in their marketing department? Or is there a certain area within marketing do you feel is absolutely essential that they get those processes and systems implemented so they can maximize lead generation and conversion on those leads, of course?
What is very important in lead generation is consistency.
Yeah.
And doing it the same, see what works, what doesn't work, and follow up. Okay. So if you don't have a process on how to do that, you're not going to be as successful. So for instance, in lead generation, so if you standardize the outreach strategies to ensure consistent messaging and consistent tracking. So you can have a branding company, a marketing company create your messaging. Let's create a process of identifying who is going to do it within your organization, of sending it out, how you're going to send it out, how often, how you're going to measure it, but also have the process of measuring the success. So you evaluate it every week, you sit down, we document that process of how do you evaluate the success of your marketing campaign and what actions then you take. I mean, obviously the actions will be different according to the results and what you analyzed, but you have a process of doing it. So you go down the checklist and you figure out, okay, this is what I need to do this week because this didn't work or that worked. Yes, worked. We have to implement it. Call centers are extremely important to document. We have done many, many, many call centers because you need to document the scripts and you have to document the procedures because sometimes there can be turnover in those areas. So you want to make sure that you have a way of training the new call center personnel very fast. But you also want to make sure that all the information is being captured. So if somebody needs to take over, they can. But the most important thing is the leads do not fall through the cracks and everybody's being followed up on. So if there was a lead generated, I call and I leave a message. If my process says that I need to reach out again the next morning, I will do that if I follow the process. So that's why it's important to have processes for call centers and of course, events and canvassing. So you need to have playbooks to maximize the return on investment and streamline what the team is doing and team coordination. We've done that as well. And that is very important because you go to an event, events can be pretty time consuming and but they can be very profitable and very successful. But if you have a checklist, if you have a process on how to run events, then you just run it through. It's so much more efficient. You're not spending that much time or wasting time reinventing the wheel. Yeah. And when you come to the event, you have a very specific procedure of what to do. And the most important thing is that you have a process on how to follow up on events because you work so hard to get to the event, you do the event and then, okay, it's done. No, it's never done. It's not done at that point. It's done when you totally maximize the follow-up and got the products that you wanted from the event.
100%. And I don't know if you know this, but Josh Yeager, he was the chief marketing officer for Matrix Home Solutions. And also he was the main face-to-face marketing director for Mad City when I was there. And he's a lifelong friend of mine. We literally have known each other since we were in kindergarten. So, but he's also the chief marketing officer for Grosso University right now. And the reason why I'm bringing him up is when we worked together at Mad City, he got in charge of building their face-to-face marketing division from scratch. And within 3 years, he grew it to doing $7 million a month from nothing. So from 0 to 3 years later, it's doing 7 million a month. And what he did, which was highly impressive, is he had detailed training scripts, training manuals, books, in-person, in-class training, in the field training, ride-alongs, where people are, shadowing and observing, and, you kind of take the training wheels off over time. So just as comprehensive of training that we had for sales, he developed all that for canvassers and show and events, brand ambassadors. And these people were super dialed in, and at the tail end of his career, we were at like 600 events in 1 year, just everywhere. But all these people were consistent in terms of how they were getting clients into the booth, the process for how they get them on the schedule, the follow-up after events, like you were talking about, even like setting up and taking down displays. How do we make sure that this is done properly, step by step? So there's a lot of things that need to be documented here, but how many of you watching this would like to have $7 million a month coming from face-to-face marketing? Well, that's not going to happen unless you have the systems and processes in place to make it happen. So
that's exactly right.
And of course, we know about even training and technology. So do you have the step-by-step training and policies and procedures for how to use the technologies? So this is why, it's a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing about systems and processes is they can obviously help you build an apex level company sooner than later, but also systems and processes are never done, right? It's like
that's true. It's true, but if you have that culture, if you operate with systems and processes, then you just improve upon them or add them every time it happens. I mean, it happens to me constantly internally in my organization. I have 15 team members, very competent, very professional. Every single time that we do something new or discover something different, immediately we improve, or we edit, we document if it's completely new. We immediately do that. We don't backlog it. So if you stay on top of it, it's really not as hard or cumbersome of a job as it looks.
And of course, we talked about marketing and call center, and of course there's scripting involved. And we know that there's scripting involved in sales too. And some people are afraid of scripting. They're afraid that if I have my salespeople learn scripts, they're going to sound robotic. So what's your opinion on that? What's your opinion on having your team learning scripts? And of course, why do you feel that that's the opposite? It's actually not a means for them to sound robotic. It's actually a means for them to finally take control over the sales encounter and have better results.
Right, because scripts, if you write the right script, it's based on experience and it's based on what works. So you take the guesswork out of it. The beauty of systems, and I'm glad you mentioned it in terms of sounding robotic, the beauty of systems is that you have to have good people, smart people that know how to use the system and bring their own personality and who they are into it. I have people that are creative. They are marketers, web designers, artists, and go, systems is not for me. But I met many creative people that are very successful. And when I interview them, and you can listen to them on my podcast, when they got interviewed, the common denominator that they all had is because they understood also the business side of things and why systems are important.
Yeah.
So when you have a script, you know exactly what you need to say. You know what will work. Now, you can't be robotic because you have to adjust and adapt to the person in front of you. But it actually gives you the freedom. We talked about freedom at the beginning. It gives you the freedom to use it correctly and to be present in the communication with the prospect in front of you, as opposed to start thinking, what am I going to say next and how am I going to say it and what will work and what will not work. If you have a well laid out system and you are drilled on it and you practice it until it sounds natural, until you own it, then you can use it freely and you gain freedom to talk to the person in front of you and make them feel that you are genuinely interested in them, right? Because the script can be, okay, Mrs. Jones, tell me about the problems that you are having with your roof. Okay, I mean, that's okay to say that, But then you truly listen, as opposed to then thinking about, oh, how am I going to word it? And should I ask you right now about the problems, or should I say that, or should I say that? And then you're in your own head thinking. But if you know what you're going to ask the question and then listen. And the listening is not part, it's not scripted, but you listen. That's where your skills as a human being come into place.
Yeah, it's absolutely vital. One analogy I always use is movies, right? And even reality TV. What percentage of movies are scripted? Only all of them, right? And that's important because if movies weren't scripted, they'd be boring. Now, all of us have probably had the experience of watching a really emotional scene in a movie and being brought to tears, or having your eyes well up. Well, when that actor is first reading that script, I guarantee it's not that emotionally compelling. It just sounds robotic because they're just trying to get the words down. But how does it get from that, just reading the words and knowing the words, to now they become this individual and have all this heavy emotion attached to how they're delivering it? Obviously, it's not what you're saying that matters, it's how they perceive what you're saying that matters, how you're delivering the message. So salespeople simply need to learn these scripts well enough to where it becomes their voice. And of course, authenticity matters in sales, right? And that's kind of what you're talking about, is you have to be genuine, you have to be authentic. You don't want to be looking as if you're regurgitating a script, but that simply is a result is you haven't rehearsed it and you don't know it well enough. But the reason why it's absolutely vital is you talked about listening. You cannot truly listen to somebody and simultaneously think about what you're going to say. You can't do both. So if you're truly going to listen to somebody, that means you're listening with your ears, eyes, and intuition. You're actually studying their body language, their facial expression, their nonverbal communication. Of course, truly listening to the words that they're saying. Once they're done talking, you truly process that information, and then you respond with another layering question or another statement that clearly demonstrates that you were listening to what they were saying. And the best salespeople talk less and listen more. But with that in mind, if you're truly going to have the ability to control your emotions, to focus on your tonality, your voice inflection, your facial expressions, and know what to say when you're going to say it, you can't do that and truly listen at the same time. So if you want to be a really good sales professional, especially in the top 1%, you have to be prepared. Now, I want to use the example that I gave earlier, the 70%. So the reason why 70%, in my opinion, is the perfect number in terms of compliance to a system in sales is because you do have to be creative. There is an element of personalization. There's an element of customization and being able to communicate with people of different personality types and different modes of or preferences of communication, right? So that 30% allows that salesperson to be a chameleon in the house, to be creative, to be able to think on their feet and come out with outside the box ways of overcoming the challenges, the objections, the obstacles that may be in front of them. But they're still using that foundation, that 70%, like you were talking earlier, as the holy grail, right? They're not deviating from that. They're just being creative in terms of how they navigate certain steps, depending on who they're talking to. So that is absolutely vital.
And I think also what you said is correct. And a vital component is also understanding. So as a salesperson, when you're drilling the script, when you're reading the script, you have to really understand why that question is there. What's the element behind it? Because when you understand it, then it's genuine. Then you know why you're asking the question. It's not because somebody told you, but you understand that if you ask that question, it will elicit a response that then you can do something with it in order to help the person. Because that is the difference between manipulating and just being robotic. As if you have the purpose within you to actually help the person in front of you, because that's really what sales is. You're directing them to help them make the decision that will help them to improve some area of their lives, right? So if you actually do that and you understand what you're doing and why you're saying, then having those words or having that script just makes it faster and you can get to your goal faster.
Yeah, first seek to understand, then to be understood. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. We've heard those quotes being thrown around. So all that stuff is absolutely vital. And I was actually talking to a client, this was about 2 weeks ago, and I'm helping people develop their in-home presentations. And one question I commonly get asked by clients is, should I put some of the scripting that I want the salespeople to make sure they're covering each time on the slide? And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, so, because you don't want your salespeople reading off the slide. And the salesperson should know what they're going to say. The only reason you have that presentation at all is to provide visual reinforcement for the things that the salesperson is talking about, because there's higher retention and more emotional involvement with things they see visually. Again, people think in pictures, not words. So we have the visual reinforcement to what they're talking about, but they shouldn't be reading off the slides. I've seen that happen actually in ride-alongs, where the salesperson's not even looking at the homeowner, they're looking at their iPad, reading word for word off the slide. And you can see within 2 minutes, the homeowner's trying to figure out creative ways to get the salesperson out of their house.
Yeah, you're not prepared. Absolutely.
Yeah, so obviously having those scripts, making sure your salespeople are expertly trained and held accountable to learning those scripts. And for me, I didn't make it negotiable. It was mandatory. If you're going to go and run these leads independently, it is mandatory that you know the crucial, fundamental, foundational scripts of our sales process verbatim. And I always like to joke around with my salespeople. What does the word verbatim mean? Does that mean you kind of know it, you know some of it, but some of it you don't, but you just wing it mostly? No, it means freaking verbatim. It means you actually know it word for word. And not that you're going to even say it word for word when you're in the house, but knowing the word for word verbatim script gives you that foundation to build upon, so you can make it your own, make it become your voice without skipping over the fundamental components of why the script was written to begin with. To your point earlier, every script is written for a reason, because it's been found to be highly effective. It's proven.
Right. I look at an actor on stage, or you mentioned movies, but an actor on stage or a performer, a singer, they can go on stage night after night, a Broadway show.
Yeah.
Night after night, they go on stage, but every single time when you're the audience, you feel like, wow, they just said it for the first time. It's not like you feel like, oh, they said it the night before and the night before and the night before, and now they're also like, I'm here on the show. That makes a bad actor if you feel that, right? So the same thing with the salesperson is you follow the process, you know the process called, and then you can be there in the moment delivering that communication.
100%. And I joke about it, and I use this as an example, is, have you ever listened to a politician when they're off script? How inspirational and compelling does a politician sound when they're off script? Now, you take that same politician, of course somebody else is most likely writing the script anyway, but a politician that's given a script, that has time to rehearse that script, that is able to kind of master it, all of a sudden they're given a State of the Union address, and they sound pretty darn compelling, right? Even if you don't like them, because they have a well-rehearsed script, they sound a heck of a lot better than they do just off-the-cuff winging it. It allows you to be way more compelling. And again, you're going to have far more effective outcomes by having that system, that process, that scripting as your foundation. It allows you to be the high caliber sales professional that you need to be. And that's, again, with marketing, with sales, having those foundational scripting.
Operations too. I mean, look, look at production. Okay, let's look at, for instance, systems in production and operations. Yeah, you do have to have a script as well. Like when you enter the home, you have to have the way you're going to talk to the homeowner. It's not just the script, it's also the rehearsed activities, where you park your van, how you step back when you knock on the door, how you present yourself, how you ask to be, it's like all those things have to be in place. But it's also the repetition and the drilling and being a professional. So when you go and install something, you know exactly what you're doing. And that's the biggest impact. If you know exactly how to install, what are the best practices. If you come back from a job, first of all, cleaning the job, right? At the end of the day, you have your procedures of what you do, you drill it. And then you don't forget. You're not a plumber that forget the tools in the bathtub and leave, and then the homeowner calls, right? Yeah. Or, I had blinds installed here. They did a fantastic job. The blinds are beautiful. But you know what? They leave packaging on my floor. So what do you think I looked at when I came home? I go like, oh, now I have to clean? Do you think I looked at how beautiful the blinds are? I mean, I'm an optimist, and I like to look at the good things. So I did look at it, but I still had a bad taste, because now I go like, oh, they left dirt on my floor. Now I have to go clean it. So if you have your process drilled, that doesn't happen. Yeah. And it also allows for a smooth, well-oiled machine inside the organization where everybody practices and they know what they're doing. It's basically the difference between an amateur and a professional. Dominic, because I hear you speak and you speak so much about how you become a professional, how you're a professional, and a professional drills, hard work, they drill, they practice. So for our listeners, if you have a company, do you want to be a professional? Do you want to be like in the NBA, NFL league, or do you want to be somebody that is just throwing the ball around and whatever happens, happens? That's really the difference between having systems and not having systems.
No, I absolutely love what you're saying, by the way, because I'll be honest with you, I hear almost nobody talking about having scripting for their production staff or people in operations. You know, like when the crews get to the door, how they're greeting the homeowner, like nobody's talking about that stuff. But that should be the most important area that you are focusing on that stuff, because who leaves a last impression? I mean, who's really delivering on all the promises? It's those crews that show up. And, you know, a lot of salespeople will paint this, you know, amazing sunshine and rainbows movie in the prospect's mind of how the crews are going to show up and they're going to give them the 5-star white glove treatment and roll out the red carpet and all this amazing stuff, which sounds great. But truly, how much training and, you know, role playing and processes and, you know, all the stuff are you truly offering to your installers and your production staff? Do you have any of that stuff in place? So if you're watching this webinar and you're thinking like, man, my crews receive no training on how to greet a homeowner, how to properly stage a job. They don't have any real systems in place. We just put a lot of trust that they're going to do it right. And kind of fingers crossed, right? Hope and pray that things go well. You can't be doing that. Again, going back to the ticking time bomb analogy and why people get into those crises that you were talking about earlier, right?
So, yeah, you know, I'll give you an example. You know, we were working with an HVAC company and they had a problem with accounts receivable. And I go like, why would you have accounts receivable problem? Don't you have a policy that, you know, 50% upfront and then 50% at the job end? Yes, but you know, the technicians, there were some technicians were good technicians, but they had back off asking for money. Well, that's where you have to have a script and you have to drill the person until they are comfortable asking for the payment. And it's also, how do you ask for the payment and how do you overcome objections if the homeowner is not willing to do something, right? So how do you sound where you are, the companies, it's a whole experience from beginning to end. I'll give you a real example that happened. I had an electrician come here. I got a bid, and I liked the company, seemed very professional. They had great reviews. So then, you know, my husband and I discussed it. We decided to move forward. I called, good, scheduled them, and 2 guys come in. So they walk in, first of all, with like energy drinks open, like the can was open, into my living room. And I never allow people to have just. Yeah. It was like, oh, okay, just don't drop that thing with full of sugar on my floor here. Yeah. And then he goes, you know what are we doing today? I go like, excuse me? And he goes, yeah, what are we doing today? The guy that gave you the estimate quit and I don't know what we're doing. I was at that moment, I was ready to let him go, right? Yeah. Yeah. So he called the manager. The manager apologized. He had to talk to me. He had to convince me because I really didn't trust anymore. You know, long story short, they did a fantastic job, but the impression was awful. Yeah. Yeah. And that is something that if they had procedures, no matter what, first of all, you know, no matter what, if you had a procedure and they follow the procedure of how to say, you know, how to enter a home, how to talk to the homeowner, how do you present yourself, bring your estimate with you, clarify exactly what we are doing today, or, you know, just with certainty, this is what we're going to do, this and that, have them sign whatever needs to be done. Okay, we know what we are doing. If they gave me that confidence, I would be like, okay, guys, go ahead, do it. That's it.
Yeah, that's such an important example. And, you know, we talk about all the different departments in the organization, and one objection I hear from clients occasionally when they try to implement a new sales process or a new system in their team is, how do I get people to buy in and truly implement? How do I implement this without causing the morale of my team to be too disrupted, right? Because people are naturally resistant to change. They push back on change. They don't want to change, especially if they're having reasonable levels of success doing what they've always done. How do we implement these systems and processes without being too disruptive to morale, and if anything, doing the opposite, improving the morale of my team?
Absolutely. So first of all, you have to have a why you want to improve. You know, if things are working well, what are you trying to why you're changing. You have to have a good why. I'm not saying don't change, but understand why you are trying to change. And if you are changing something that is going well, why you have to understand why can it be disruptive to employees' morale? Why are people resistant to change? Without going into too much of analyzing it, it can shake the stability. Like, I know that I'm doing A, B, and C every day and it's working. Now you want me to be X, Y, Z, and I don't know. I don't have the time to learn. I'm skeptical. Why change? So whenever there is a change, you have to explain. You have to pilot the process with a single team or department to see that it's successful and then showcase that. And that is what we do when we start working with companies. We always pick one team. I always ask, which team, which department do you think we can work with that will showcase the success afterwards to other teams? So they will say, oh, I want the same results. Yeah. So you do that. And then if it's successful, then you roll it out to everyone, but you have a proven process, you have a proven concept at that point. It's not something new out of your imagination, because you can show that if you do this, this, and that, those are the results. Yeah. And also, you have to involve the team in order to get buy-in. So what we do, for instance, when we start documenting processes and procedures for companies, we always involve the team. We do a survey and we ask the team, what if you had well-documented processes and procedures for this part of your organization, for your part, what will be the changes? What would you feel that is different? How it will help you? It is the what is it in it for me kind of situation, right? So, you focus on the benefits, whether it's stress reduction, efficiency, job satisfaction, whatever that person is real to that person and they want to achieve, you get that buy-in.
No, that's great. I'm glad you really talked about, taking a segment of your team and implementing that and letting the results speak for themselves, because I often get companies ask me, how do I get these veteran salespeople, for example, to buy into this new sales process, especially if they've had decent levels of success doing what they're used to, right? And my answer is, let's get these new sales representatives that are coming in expertly trained on the new system from day one, have them go out there and sell circles around the competition, sell circles around the veterans, show what can happen when the system is followed more systematically. And it's going to make those veterans, they have two choices at that point. They can either evolve, get with the times and embrace this system, or they can become replaced by somebody that does. And of course, veteran salespeople have egos, so they don't want this rookie salesperson to sell circles around them. So naturally, they're going to want to learn more about, hey, how can I be more competitive? How can I follow this system? And that was my experience at Mad City early in my career. So going back to 2010, I was really the first salesperson that mastered the 10-step Grosso system. And in my first 6 months, I sold $1 million in business. And prior to that, no one had sold $1 million in a year. And everyone's like, what are you doing? How are you doing this? And I'm like, did you read the training book? Did you watch the videos? Did you listen to the audio cassettes that we had, or VHS at the time? So then all of a sudden they're asking me questions and they're more curious, and now they themselves are open-minded to actually diving in and learning the process. And then fast forward a few years later, now everyone in that company was 100% on the system. It wasn't an on-off switch, but that's a great way to do it, is let the results speak for themselves, and then you're going to get buy-in from those people that are skeptical.
Exactly. Or, my favorite example is when we documented the processes and procedures for a company, a construction company, where they had 5 estimators that have been working there for 30 years, they make money for the owner. They knew that they're never going to get, not that I'm advocating anybody to get fired, but they knew that they had, they are producers. And when I had to interview them to create the processes, they were very resistant. Like, why do you need to know what I do? So we started with a survey. What will happen? Like, what areas do you feel there are challenges? What do you need help with? So we came to them like, what do you need help with? How can we help you? And they needed help because they didn't have enough admin help. They don't like to do the admin. They didn't like to do the paperwork. They didn't want to follow up. They want somebody to help them with that. I said, okay, fine. let's really look at your process, see what parts you keep and what parts you teach me how to do it. We'll create a job description and hire an admin. I'll advocate for you to hire an admin. And we did just that. We hired an admin to service those 5 estimators. Perfect. It was just perfect because then they gained out of it. They loved it because now the process was working for them because they had the help that they wanted. And they became such advocates of the whole process and having processes in place, because also when they estimate, guess what? Again, the production team has to execute. If they don't execute, then their work is not fulfilled because, they can just take it so far, but then it has to actually be done. So that's another point is, okay, well, they like to point fingers. Well, the production, if they actually produce, great, let's have them produce. Let's make sure that they're accountable. Let's have processes. Yeah, let's do it. And then you get the buy-in.
Yeah, a lot of times people say, if an employee or anyone on your team doesn't believe in what they're doing, you have to let them go. But why is it that they don't believe? It's because they don't have clarity, they don't have support, they don't have the recognition, they don't feel like what they do has purpose or meaning, or they're just kind of out there, is sink or swim, just making things up as they go. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard of people like in sales, for example, it's like, here's your sample, here's your contract, good luck, and just no direction as to what they're supposed to be doing and why and all that stuff. So one thing that I see that really separates highly successful companies from average companies, along with being systematized, having the processes in place, optimizing all these things we're talking about, but they also take the time to develop a clear set of core values that they follow religiously. So I wanted to ask you this, why do you feel, first of all, that this matters so much, especially nowadays? And what would be your advice for a company that's looking to create and implement a set of core values successfully?
So core values are very important because that's who you are. When we document processes and procedures, we always document it according to the core value of the company, whatever is important for the company. If one of your core values is lifelong learning, so part of the processes will be also include how do we learn, how do we do continuing education, how do you impart that knowledge to your team. If it is, I give me another core value that you've seen, Dominic. Give me an example.
Oh, a core value, like extreme ownership.
Right, extreme ownership, good. So each process that we will document will have at the top of it is what is your ownership? What are best practices to own this, and what are the measurables of success to know that you're actually owning this process? So having core values is extremely important to good documentation.
Absolutely, and it becomes the number one filter that companies use to either hire or fire an employee that's not compatible with those core values. And from the companies that I talk to, it's kind of like the supreme law of the land and the line in the sand for their business. It's like, even if I like you out of love, if you're not compatible with our core values, I have to let you go for something that's a better fit, right?
It is, but I know, you can also train on core values using processes, because you can put out their core values that are 1 word or 2 words, or maybe you explain it in a sentence, but what it means to me doesn't necessarily what it means to you, because we come from different backgrounds, different education, different point of view. So what we have done with companies, we created training on how to train in the core values. And the way that you do that is you set examples, you show how you use those core values in day-to-day operations. So when you're selling, what does it mean to have extreme ownership? When you are installing, what does it mean to have extreme ownership? Do you have a quality control checklist at the end? Do you go back and you sign off that everything is clean and done correctly? What is those core values? How do they manifest themselves in the actual work, day-to-day work? And then you can evaluate the person if they are abiding by this core value or not. Otherwise, it's very subjective.
One thing that I see that's lacking entirely from most organizations is having a clear program or process in place for how someone gets promoted. Having a certain role within your organization, maybe you got an entry-level position. Does that person know how do they advance within your organization? I venture to guess that most companies don't really have a clear pathway forward in terms of how somebody can grow and elevate in their position. Maybe There's some people that are okay doing the same job for the rest of their life. Maybe there's some. But I venture to guess that a lot of people love the opportunity to be able to grow and advance within a company, especially if it's a company they love and want to make a career working for, dedicate a good chunk of their life working with. So I guess, do you see that missing often in companies, and why do you feel that that's important?
Yes, and I'll give you an example of myself. I am part of an organization, and I always like to take a leadership role or volunteer in a committee. And I got offered to volunteer in a committee, a very prestigious committee. And I asked for what are the roles that are available, and I got a list, and I got some job descriptions for them, like a paragraph. But if there were well-documented processes and procedures for each one of those roles, I will be able to look at it and see, A, can I do it right now? B, I can decide what training or what do I need to do in order to qualify to do all those actions, and see a timeline of how long it will take for me to achieve that. So then my actions, so if we take it to the workplace, if I'm right now a technician and I want to be the supervisor, if I can see all the procedures that the supervisor does, I will see what I need to improve in order to be able to do that. Then you have a very clear career path. It takes the mystery out of things.
So obviously incredible content, Adi, and Lord knows we could talk for hours about this stuff. But I guess if someone is looking to start the process of systematizing their business, because it'd be nice just to be like, let's systematize everything. I want every position, everything systematized right now. And that's probably not realistic for everyone watching this. So how did they determine where to begin? Like when you sit down with a new client, which department, how do they know where to start? And how do you, again, usually go through that process with your clients to determine what's going to give them the best return on their investment?
That's exactly right. It's the return on investment.
Yeah.
So I will ask the question, what area in the company, if you had well-documented processes and procedures, will get you the biggest return on investment? And that is where we are going to start, because that is the number one area, because we want to see results right away. We talked about getting buy-in. We talked about showcasing. We're going to start with the area that will get you the biggest results. And that is where I will start. Then we'll go from there. We'll map the processes. We'll extract the information. We'll get the buy-in from your team. We'll create the processes. We'll create those that don't exist. We'll document those that exist. We'll optimize. And then we'll roll it out to your team. And that's a whole different webinar. And Dominic, we probably should do one about how to roll it to your team and get it followed by all. And that is a whole subject.
Well, that's what I love about your service is you don't just leave your clients hanging okay, have fun, figure it out. You're there every step of the way to ensure these processes are properly optimized, implemented, and accepted by all. And that truly is a 5-star white glove experience if I've ever seen one, So I can see why, anybody listening to this, that sounds highly appealing. And, if someone watching this is I definitely want to at least get the process started, at least have a conversation. Do you offer a free discovery session or a no obligation?
Yes.
How does that process look?
I actually have a video on my website. It's our proven process. So it's a 5-minute video explaining the whole process. But the first thing, if you are interested to talk to me, even if you don't know if you're ready or not, or you want to find out, reach out. And you can go to the Grosso University website, and we have a link there to schedule a free consultation. And I can answer any questions that you have about process improvement, and give you an honest answer. I can say, well, you're on your way, you have it. Right now, it's not the right time. Or it can be, this is what we can do for you. We can start small, or you are ready to do the entire thing. Whatever it is, reach out, schedule the consultation, and we can talk.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Grosso University, we've had the honor and privilege of talking with numerous organizations and companies that are in the consulting space. And again, we do consulting. So you may think that, what Adi and I do, there's some overlap, and there is some. But the reason why we felt it was necessary to bring her in is we've never met another team of people that can take a company in every pillar of your business, every department, and provide such optimal systems and processes and help your team implement them the way that they can. And again, your 30 years of experience obviously is a testament. And again, you're going to be able to take all that beautiful stuff that's in their minds and get it documented, get it optimized, and again, make sure that everyone's properly trained. Because that's a whole different animal in itself, making sure, how do you even train this stuff, right? So if you're at the beginning stages.
Dom, because it's like what you do. Again, if you have to have the sales dialed in, you have to know how to sell, you need to close. Always be closing, you have to close. But if you are doing what Dom tells you to do and you are closing, you have to make sure the rest of the organization is set up to receive all that influx of clients so they get the same experience as they got from your salesperson, but all the way. And it will give the certainty and the confidence to your salespeople to sell more because they're going to be proud of the results that the entire company is getting.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, if they go into every house just radiating that belief and confidence and passion for the company they represent, and they know that everything they promise is going to be delivered on every single time, that makes it far more easy to go sell and be consistent at sales. So you sell proportionate to how you feel.
And that's really the truth of why we have our partnership here, is because it doesn't end by training great salespeople. You have to continue to deliver on the other side of it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And again, I just want to thank you for all your wisdom and what you're doing for this industry, and of course for the partnership. And thank you for educating our audience here. And of course, there's a lot more of these to come. So if you are looking to systematize your business, please go to our website, grossuniversity.com. You can go to our sponsors tab, and you can see all about Business Success Consulting Group and how to set up a no obligation discovery session. They can kind of walk you through the process. It's something, in my opinion, in the coming years, you can't afford not to do. If you're gonna look to thrive in 2025 and beyond, it's time to get optimized, get systematized, no more shooting from the hip. This industry is evolving and you need to evolve too, and this is one of those things that's becoming more important than ever before. So I just wanna say thanks to everyone watching this webinar. We know there's a lot of podcasts and webinars you could be watching. Your time is certainly very much appreciated. We hope you took away a lot of pages of golden nuggets you can use to grow and scale and thrive in the coming year. And as always with Grosso University, yes, you are a closer.
That's right.